Have you ever truly thought about what happens inside you when you masturbate? I'm not just talking about the physical sensations, but what unfolds in your mind, your soul, deep within your being. Masturbation remains a topic almost no one discusses openly. Even in today's world, where everything seems freer, it's still surrounded by shame, guilt, and many prejudices, whether from religious beliefs, our upbringing, or distorted self-image around sexuality. The truth is, many people experience inner turmoil when they masturbate. What if I told you that this act, which many consider benign or sinful, actually reveals deep aspects of the human subconscious? According to Carl Jung, Jung was an explorer of the soul. He saw people not only through what they do, but especially through what drives them to do it. He believed that every behavior carries a hidden meaning, an energy, a symbol, and that includes masturbation. For him, this act can be a form of psychological compensation, a way for the subconscious to make up for something absent or repressed. Sometimes it's a means of escape. Sometimes an attempt to reconnect with forgotten parts of oneself. It's no wonder this intimate and common behavior can hold so many meanings. That's why today, instead of speaking superficially or morally about the act itself, we're going to approach things differently. We'll analyze it from the perspective of depth psychology. We'll understand what lies behind masturbation when it's repeated too often, when it becomes addictive, or when it happens automatically without us truly realizing it. Jung states that what is not brought to consciousness returns to the mind. In other words, if you don't understand what motivates you, you end up being guided by forces you don't even know exist. And many of these forces manifest themselves as desires, impulses, and behaviors you may think you control but don't always. Before judging or feeling guilty, what we really need is to become aware of them. What lies behind your desire? What part of yourself is trying to express itself? And most importantly, what do you do with the energy you release during masturbation? That's precisely what we're going to talk about. This topic goes way beyond appearances. Number 1, libido, the soul's fuel and its misdirection. When we hear the word libido, we almost always immediately think of sex, right? But for Carl Jung, libido wasn't solely sexual desire. In fact, he saw libido as a kind of fuel for the soul. For Jung, libido is a life force that moves everything within us. Desires, wills, dreams, fears. All of this is psychic energy, and sexual desire is just one of the forms this energy can take. Now, stop and think about what happens when this energy has nowhere to go. When we have no space to express ourselves with a purpose, this force begins to accumulate, begins to boil within us, and often finds another outlet. Masturbation, in this sense, can be a quick and solitary way to release this built-up energy. But an important question arises here. Is this energy being used consciously, or is it simply wasted? Jung believed that how we use our libido says a lot about our inner state. If you find yourself returning to a repetitive behavior, such as compulsive or automatic masturbation, it may be a sign that your spiritual energy is spinning its wheels, stagnating, or losing its purpose. Its true purpose is creation, connection, and transformation. It's not about whether masturbation is good or bad. It's not a question of morality, but of consciousness. Because when we make an act unconscious, it begins to control us without us even realizing it. Sometimes we masturbate not out of pure desire, but out of sadness, boredom, anxiety, or loneliness. In this case, the libido serves to fill a void, to hide a wound that may not yet have healed. This is where something very powerful comes into play. When you begin to recognize what lies beneath your desire, you have the opportunity to transform that energy into something deeper. Masturbation shouldn't just be a relief. It can also be a form of reconnection. But this only happens when you begin to view your libido not as a problem or a shame, but as a sacred, creative, and vital force, something worthy of respect. Because deep down, it's the libido that makes the soul vibrate, and if properly directed, it can change everything. Number 2, the shadow, unveiling hidden desires. Knowing that, according to Jung, libido is the vital energy that animates everything within us. It's time to explore a more delicate, but also more revealing dimension. The shadow. For Jung, the shadow refers to everything we hide from ourselves. Everything we've learned not to feel, not to think, to be unacceptable. Desires, Impulses, emotions often repressed since childhood. Sexuality is one of the areas where the shadow manifests most profoundly, because from a very young age, we learn that certain things are ugly, sinful, bad. We learn to be ashamed of our own body, of lust, curiosity, desire, and all this is repressed deep in the subconscious. But the repressed does not disappear, it only changes form. This is where masturbation comes into play. When it occurs hidden by feelings of guilt, in an impulse, in a hurry, it is perhaps driven by the very shadow that is there, wanting to express itself, wanting to come out, even if in a distorted form. Have you ever noticed how often after masturbation this feeling of emptiness, even shame, arises, as if something had been done wrong, even without anyone directly saying so? This could be a reflection of your shadow, both active and repressed. Jung said that as long as you don't become aware of your shadow, it will continue to rule your life, and you call it destiny. This means that if you ignore your unconscious impulses, you'll end up being controlled by them without realizing it, without understanding them, without having a choice. In the case of masturbation, this means we ultimately repeat this behavior not out of desire, but because we are trapped in a pattern born of oppression, not freedom. However, there is an important twist here. Looking at the shadow does not mean fighting it. It does not mean eliminating desires. It means recognizing them. It means revealing what lies in the shadows. It means understanding that this desire, this fantasy, this impulse has an origin, and that when you understand its origin, you can decide what to do with it. So, the next time you feel that automatic impulse, stop for a moment and ask yourself, is this a true desire, or is it my shadow trying to manifest itself? This simple question can open a breach in consciousness, and consciousness, my friend, is the beginning of all liberation. Number 3, complexes. When another part takes over, if there's one thing Jung knew perfectly well, it's that our minds don't work as simply as we imagine. Many of the things we do automatically and without thinking have deep roots in the psyche. And one of these roots is what we call complexes. Rest assured, complex in Jungian psychology is not complicated as the word suggests. A complex is a series of emotions, memories, and ideas that form around a memorable experience, usually charged with a strong positive or negative effect. And the strangest thing, when a complex is triggered, we feel like we lose our identity for a moment, as if another part of our psyche takes over. We act impulsively. We think differently. We feel differently. And then we don't even understand why. Now, let's connect this with masturbation. How many times have you found yourself caught in a vicious cycle? You know, that feeling of just wanting one last time, even though you don't feel like it, or that moment when you're trying to deal with fear, loneliness, or rejection. And without realizing it, you end up turning to masturbation as an escape, because in those moments, it may not be you who is in control, but a complex triggered by an emotional wound from the past. It could be the repressed adolescent, the child who felt abandoned, or the young person punished for expressing their body. These parts don't disappear with time. They're stored, and when something from the present touches that old wound, the complex awakens and acts out. So, compulsive masturbation isn't necessarily sex-related. It can be an unconscious attempt to numb the pain of a situation that hasn't yet healed. And this is the most important point. You don't overcome a complex by fighting it. You overcome it by becoming aware of it, facing it, and asking yourself, what am I trying to avoid right now? What feeling don't I want to feel? Where does this fear, this emptiness, this unease come from? Jung said that the complex has a life of its own, and that even if we don't integrate these distinct parts of us, they continue to lead us to behaviors that weaken us. But when you realize that you're not weak, bad, or strange, but simply that you have characteristics you haven't yet accepted, then the real transformation begins. Masturbation can be a mirror in this sense, a signal that something inside you is crying out for attention, not punishment, but listening. Number 4, Anima/Animus, the inner other. What exactly are you looking for when you masturbate? The immediate response may be pleasure, but according to Carl Jung, there's much more to it than that, especially when two very specific figures from the unconscious come into play, the Anima and the Animus. These names may sound strange, but what they represent is very familiar to us. The Anima is the image of the feminine in men. The Animus, that of the masculine in women. These figures are constructed throughout our lives from our experiences with people of the opposite sex, especially in the most formative relationships, such as those with parents and siblings. Jung said that when you fall in love, idealize someone, or feel a strong attraction to a person of the opposite sex, you might actually project your anima or animus onto that person. Now think about it. Who exactly are you relating to when you masturbate? Even if you're not with another person, that relationship physically exists in your mind. There's an image of fantasy, a sensation of being with someone, and that person is often a direct reflection of your anima or animus. Here's a crucial point. When these internal figures are distorted, repressed, or wounded, the management of desire is also unbalanced. You may constantly masturbate with fantasies of domination, humiliation, or submission, or create an idealized, almost unrealistic and unattainable image of your ideal partner. These are all signs that your anima or animus is yearning for healing, for integration. This solitary, intimate act, which seems so simple, can actually be a phase of inner drama, the one between your conscious self and those inner images that inhabit you. Jung believed that the integration of the anima or animus is essential to individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are. Consciously recognizing and connecting with your inner femininity or masculinity is fundamental to self-knowledge. So, the next time you feel the need or urge to masturbate, stop and observe the person you are connected with at that moment. What does this image in your mind represent? A desire, a lack, a memory? Asking this question at such a moment may seem excessive, but it isn't. It is precisely in these moments of greatest intimacy and solitude that the soul speaks. And when we begin to listen to it, desire ceases to be purely physical. It becomes profound, even soothing. Because ultimately, masturbation can also be a somewhat strange and confusing attempt to find the other within. Number 5, sublimation. Transforming energy into creation. We've talked about desire, hidden urges, and everything behind masturbation. But a radical shift is emerging today. What to do with all that energy? According to Carl Jung, there is something called sublimation, and it has nothing to do with repressing desire or pretending it doesn't exist. Quite the opposite. In psychology, sublimation means transforming a primitive energy like sexual desire into something creative, constructive, or even spiritual. It's when we stop discharging that energy into automatic behaviors and begin channeling it into something greater, an art, a project, an education, a life's work. You know that fire you feel when you aspire, that energy that seems to fill your entire body? That's raw power. And when you learn to direct it, it becomes a driving force, an expression of courage, presence. It becomes life pulsing in other areas that also need attention. The problem is, we've often learned only two things, either repress or release. And either path on its own ends up sickening the soul. Repression is agony. Unconsciously discharging oneself creates emptiness. Sublimation is the third path, that of transformation. Before you think this is just talk, let me remind you a quote from Jung. Psychic energy must flow. If you stop it, it rots. If you waste it, it turns against you. But if you channel it, it heals you. How many artists, musicians, writers, and thinkers have channeled their suffering, desires, and frustrations into incredible works? How many people, after overcoming addictions or compulsions, have launched projects, helped others, and innovated? The energy of desire doesn't need to be extinguished. It just needs to be guided. This doesn't mean you should stop masturbating, but perhaps you should ask yourself, am I using this energy only to release tension, or can I channel it into something creative, something that inspires me, that fulfills me? This could be writing, drawing, singing, cooking, dancing, meditating. Anything that connects you to something beyond immediate pleasure. Masturbation can still exist, but it's no longer the only outlet. It's part of a larger system where pleasure isn't just physical, but also emotional, symbolic, and spiritual. Jung believed that humans are symbolic beings. We don't just live by instinct, we live by meaning. And when you understand what your desires try and tell you, you begin to make real choices. Number 6, the emptiness after pleasure, a call from the soul. You know that moment after masturbation, when everything seems a little boring? It's as if the body feels relieved, but something inside us sometimes remains restless. Sometimes you feel a slight sense of guilt, sometimes a sadness that's hard to explain, or simply an awkward silence. as if something is missing. This is precisely when you need to stop and listen. Carl Jung said that everything that repeats itself unconsciously is deep down a plea from the soul that wants to be heard. And that emptiness after pleasure can be precisely that, the soul calling you not to condemn you, but to show you that perhaps you are looking not only for pleasure, but also for connection, a deep sense of affection, of presence, the feeling of being seen by someone, even if it's just yourself. But physical pleasure fades quickly. If it's not accompanied by mindfulness, it doesn't fill you. It only puts out the fire for a few minutes. And when the body relaxes, the same question persists: what do I really need? Jung said that the moments of greatest discomfort are also the most fruitful. Then the soul whispers, look within, there is something you don't see. Perhaps you are touching yourself without truly feeling it. And it's worth considering how often masturbation is a substitute for real intimacy. How often it serves as an escape from difficult conversations, loneliness, boredom, or anxiety. This isn't to demonize the act or blame anyone, but to recognize that the emptiness that follows is neither a flaw nor a punishment, but a sign, a reminder that some part of you is missing that sense of real contact with yourself or others. Perhaps you're looking for something more than physical pleasure. Perhaps you're seeking a reunification with your being. And this emptiness can be the first step towards this reunification. For as Jung said, human beings cannot live on pleasure alone. They need meaning. And pleasure accompanied by presence and awareness transforms into something much greater. It becomes a bridge between body and soul. Number 6, the emptiness after pleasure, a call from the soul. You know that moment after masturbation, when everything seems a little boring? It's as if the body feels relieved, but some number 7 integration, unifying body, mind, and spirit. After all we have seen, you may be asking yourself, so what should I do? Stop masturbating? Fight the desire? Try to repress it? The answer is no. It's not about stopping. It's about changing. Carl Jung never advocated rigid impulse control. He knew that repression only shifted the problem inward. He proposed something different: integration. That is, learning to recognize, accept, and transform one's impulses without letting oneself be dominated by them, but also without seeking to repress them. Masturbation, like any other manifestation of libido, is neither good nor bad in itself. What makes the difference is the state of consciousness that underlies the act. If one practices it out of boredom, by compulsively running away, you fuel a vicious cycle that distances you from yourself. But if you do it with presence, respect for your body, and an understanding of your emotions and their causes, it can even become an act of well-being. For Jung, integration means ceasing to live in division. It means unifying body, mind, and spirit. It means understanding that desire doesn't have to be the villain in your story. It can be the engine of a more creative, honest, and freer life. And this transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. You will stumble, you will get lost, you will repeat patterns. But over time, as you continue to observe yourself and ask yourself if you are welcoming something, the impulse that was once automatic will change. It will now become a choice. The guilt that once suffocated you now gives way to curiosity. The emptiness that once weighed you down now becomes a fertile space for new meanings. You don't need to stop masturbating. You just need to stop running away from yourself. And when you begin to truly find yourself, then you will understand that this burning desire within you was never a problem. It was always the call to become whole, the call to no longer merely survive, and finally live with the soul. Subscribe, turn on the bell, and share this with someone who has also tried to understand themselves better. Until next time, thing inside us sometimes remains restless. Sometimes you feel a slight sense of guilt, sometimes a sadness that's hard to explain, or simply an awkward silence, as if something is missing. This is precisely when you need to stop and listen. Carl Jung said that everything that repeats itself unconsciously is deep down a plea from the soul that wants to be heard. And that emptiness after pleasure can be precisely that, the soul calling you not to condemn you, but to show you that perhaps you're looking not only for pleasure, but also for connection, a deep sense of affection, of presence, the feeling of being seen by someone, even if it's just yourself. But physical pleasure fades quickly. If it's not accompanied by mindfulness, It doesn't fill you. It only puts out the fire for a few minutes. And when the body relaxes, the same question persists: what I really need? Jung said that the moments of greatest discomfort are also the most fruitful. Then the soul whispers, look within, there is something you don't see. Perhaps you are touching yourself without truly feeling it. And it's worth considering how often masturbation is a substitute for real intimacy, how often it serves as an escape from difficult conversations, loneliness, boredom, or anxiety. This isn't to demonize the act or blame anyone, but to recognize that the emptiness that follows is neither a flaw nor a punishment, but a sign, a reminder that some part of you is missing that sense of real contact with yourself or others. Perhaps you're looking for something more than physical pleasure. Perhaps you are seeking a reunification with your being, and this emptiness can be the first step towards this reunification. For as Jung said, human beings cannot live on pleasure alone. They need meaning. And pleasure accompanied by presence and awareness transforms into something much greater. It becomes a bridge between body and soul.